From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And
things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us.
Deliver us.
Okay, spooks and spookettes, I do apologize for the delay. We had some technical difficulties, but I believe that we finally have those fleshed out. With me this evening is a good friend of mine, a fellow horror hostess. She is, her human name is known as Jennifer Nangle, but of course she is known to the rest of the world as Queen Malvolia, the Queen of Screams. My queen, I thank you so much for coming on here this evening. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Let me see here. I'm gonna, let's see. Can we see you? Sorry, there's a slight delay in the Zoom, so I'm trying. Okay, you're coming through. So, whew, it's been an evening, hasn't it?
It's been a day for sure. I will definitely agree with you on that. Yes.
We were speaking off camera just how hectic it was, and Murphy's Law. It always applies, doesn't it?
Truth. So much truth. Yes.
Yeah. So we're sort of talking shop here for a second. The producers sort of had this thing rigged up to where we were going to be able to record through some fancy means of magic called OBS. But we weren't able to work through it, so we just decided to go through the more simplistic route and just do straight through Zoom. So I hope it's not too much of an inconvenience. I think we look perfect, but we'll let the audience decide. So, Jen, going straight into it, how would you describe your alter ego, Queen Malvolia, to someone that's never had a chance to watch the show? And this may be kind of a strange question, but what kind of horror hostess are you? Do you show original works, or do you take more of the traditional route and show classic horror films or classic B films?
Well, to answer your first question, Queen Malvolia is a vicious vixen. She is out for a thrill and a kill. She's ready to drink human blood any second of the day or night, and no one is safe around her.
So my kind of vixen.
Absolutely. Everybody's kind of vixen, right?
Of course.
And what I decided to do was being a filmmaker myself and going through the film festival circuit, and then my short films kind of like just hanging out on YouTube. I thought that I would take, indie horror filmmakers, short films, their work, and showcase them. So that's what I do on my YouTube channel, is showcase indie horror film.
I seem to hear a lot of that. This notion of what being in this position where you're an independent filmmaker and you're trying to break out, as it were, and maybe there are occasions where your films don't quite get the respect that you feel like they deserve. So you figure out a way to help yourself, but also to help others. And I like that. So I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but was that intentional? Did you go into it thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm going to help people who are in the same plight as I am?
No, that was not the plan at all. Actually,
Okay.
to answer your question, none of this was the plan. I was never supposed to be a horror hostess. I was never supposed to exist this long. My original idea was I was going to have Queen Malvolia as a character in a found footage feature film. And
Mm.
I was kind of going through a Blair Witch phase where I wanted her to be real. I wanted, to have a fan base. I wanted something out there that people could relate to when they watch the found footage film. And I decided halfway through, I was like, oh, let's just do a web series. I'm going to do 6-episode web series, get my name out there, get a fan base, and see what happens. And being a filmmaker, I have a lot of filmmaker friends, and a lot of them were more than willing to volunteer some of their short films for me to host. And that's what we did. And the minute I actually showcased the picture of the Queen, the very first picture that I launched, craziness happened. I actually thought that I was
Mm.
going to get hate. I thought people were going to, look down upon me, kind of laugh at me, roll their eyes at me. And a lot of people embraced it, and they saw the power in the character without even me, making any type of episode yet. So I was like, oh my God, like I have something here. What am I going to do? So I was like, what are we going to do? So we ended up making 6 episodes, and then I decided that we were going to do more, and we've been going nonstop. So yeah, that was never the plan, but here we are.
Well, happy accidents.
Yes.
And a lot of these these wonderful shows, wonderful films, wonderful effects, they all happen like that. I, I,
Mhm.
I think that's fascinating, and I can relate. We all go through these horror phases, whether it's Italian films or slasher films or bar rescue. We all have our little phases, don't we?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
So what I ask this question a lot of my guests. Where does your love of horror come from? Or going back to what we were talking about a second ago, did you just sort of fall into horror by accident? Like, were you hooked on other genres and then you sort of fell into it, or your horror hosting, fell in love with it, and here you are?
No, actually, I was raised with horror. I grew up in a small town called Danvers, Massachusetts, which is right next to Salem. So I was part of the whole Salem witch trials. We had all that history. I grew up in a haunted house. The very, very first house that I ever lived in, there were full body apparitions that were seen. And my dad is a
Hmm.
huge horror fanatic. My grandmother, loves vampires, vampire movies, Alfred Hitchcock. So all of these things were common things growing up and sitting around the holiday dinner table talking about. So it was always there, and it was always in my blood. I just, as a filmmaker, held off for so long because I was so I don't know, intimidated by the genre. I didn't think that I would be able to give a good, I don't know, story idea as far as making a horror film. But finally I was just like, no, I have to. This is what I love. If I'm gonna write, produce, direct, edit, and act in a project, I want to do a genre that I absolutely love. And so that's how the horror thing kind of happened.
So since you brought it up, if unless you're uncomfortable about talking about it, can you tell us about some of the apparitions that you saw living in Danvers, Massachusetts? Like, is there a particular story that stands out to you that you'd be willing to share with us tonight?
Yeah, actually, because I was so young, I only lived in the house until I was 6 years old. I personally don't recall or remember, but my dad owned the house before he was even married to my mom. So he had a lot of experiences and a lot of um, he's seen things.
Mm.
A lot of common things that would happen in the house were a lot of phantom footsteps. Sometimes if you were in the basement, you would hear footsteps come through the front door and go all the way, through the house. And I know my grandfather was there in the house one time, and he called up and he was like, Jim, are you home? Calling for my dad, and nobody was there, but he could hear footsteps. But one great story that happened to my dad was he was sleeping one night and he had the door closed. Everything was locked and everything. He was alone and he was sleeping, and he said that he felt really uncomfortable. Like he was still kind of half asleep, but there was something weird, like something that just kind of, made him feel off. And so he opened up his eyes and he saw a man standing there, and it took him a couple seconds to realize he was looking at a man. And then he realized not only was he looking at a man, but he was looking right through a man. And so he realized that was an apparition or a ghost of some sort. And basically the man just kind of looked at him and turned around and walked through the door. Didn't open it, but just went right through it. So I know that another person who's probably going to remain nameless, because a lot of the people that have seen things don't want to be known who they are. But another person has seen a full body female apparition. And for a while, I was going to kind of write a horror movie based upon some of the things that happened in the house. And I had some email exchanges with our town historian, and the full body apparitions line up with the very family that built and owned that house and lived in that house for years. So it all makes a lot of sense. Like phantom footsteps will stop at one point. And then I found out that's because there was an addition that was added on to the house. It wasn't a part of the original house. So a lot of crazy similarities happen. So
I was going to say, if I happen to have known some of these apparitions, I wanted to go ahead and apologize to you and your family, because most likely they were drunk. But it doesn't look like they fit the description of anyone I know.
No, not in your friend circle.
Well, I can't promise that, but I've known many ghosts in my day.
Sure.
Not to say that I haven't bumped elbows with a few of the folks that you met, but it just, I don't know. I don't know how many of them eventually made their way out to the new world. So, speaking, this just popped in my head. Speaking of new world, me being from the old world, I have to apologize to you because I accidentally mispronounced your name. And I mispronounced your name in a promo a couple of weeks leading up to the interview, and I felt so embarrassed because Malvolia it's a European name, and that just kind of shows you how long I've been out of the old country. So
yeah, it is an Italian name. The research that I did, it's an Italian name meaning ill will.
Okay. Well, I don't feel as bad because Italian, me being in the eastern part of the continent, it makes sense that there'd be a clash of dialect. So, but still,
So you are forgiven. You are forgiven.
Thank you, my queen. Well, so, and another thing. So me being the corny gentleman that I am, you mentioned that your grandmother loved vampire films. Just out of curiosity, did she have a particular favorite? Or do you remember?
That's a good question.
I've been known
right now. I would call her.
I've been known to float a couple from time to time. So.
Oh, I see. Well, I know that she was very partial to Anne Rice, a lot of Anne Rice movies. I'm assuming Interview with a Vampire. Dracula, she was a fan of Dracula. But she also was a huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock, and we definitely had a huge conversation about the movie Rope. So I know that doesn't have any vampires in it, but
well, no, but Hitchcock, maybe not so much a horror person, but definitely horror adjacent, horror friendly. And he's made a lot of a lot of spooky films. So I like him, but I think I lost my train of thought there for a second. Well, anyway, so hitting on what you spoke about being a filmmaker, do you have time to fit other projects in between Malvolia, or is it Malvolia 24/7 or 25/8, depending on how hard you work?
Oh no, I definitely have time for other projects. I usually focus Malvolia at the end of the year. So I usually start September, October, and then go through December. So I hit all those holidays. So I do all the holiday specials. So we always have the Halloween special, Thanksgiving special, Christmas special. Um, but yeah, no, a lot of the rest of the time I'm always kind of writing other films, and I'm currently writing a feature film, and yeah, I'm staying active. So
Very good, very good. Um, let's see. Actually, okay. So, kind of take me through, some of the specials that you do. Do you like doing themed episodes, or do you kind of like to be a little bit more eclectic? And the reason why, so for my show, for my radio theater program, I do more. Usually, I will have an episode that follows some sort of a theme, like a Lovecraft theme, or our most recent episode, we happen to have two stories that involved, a dangerous game, like a strange survival scenario. But usually the seasons are very eclectic. So like you have all of those episodes in one season. So is it kind of a similar format, or do you kind of uh, what do you prefer? I guess is what I'm asking.
well, because I usually do 2 episodes a week. So
Mhm.
usually one will be showcasing a horror short, and then the next one would be a skit. So usually the skits, or like, really quirky kind of scene, comedy
Mhm.
horror scene, um, usually isn't that big. It's usually like whatever inspiration I have, whatever
Sure.
inspiration I write about, whatever I know I can um, shoot really easily. Quarantine was definitely a challenge. We had to really think outside the box when we were doing some skits like that.
Mhm.
But usually for that, the specials, the holiday specials, as far as Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, we always go all out. This past Halloween, I rented out like a small location that had a theater in it. So I wrote the short film around the theater and the stage. Um, for Thanksgiving, I just wanted to have a massacre, just this evil, mean, cruel massacre. And so a woman let us shoot at her house. So it just kind of depends on the location, what I can get my hands on, what inspiration comes to me. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's pretty much what I
No,
usually go off of. Yeah.
no, it does. I just listening to you and li- seeing what I've seen of the show, it really reinforces to me how unique your show is
Oh,
compared to
thank you.
a lot of traditional horror hosts. Not of course, we love the traditional horror hosts and we love to see more of them, but
Yes.
it is nice to see something a little bit different every now and again. And I definitely see how this you being the outlier sort of got you on a recent panel that you did for May Massacre.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you don't mind, I wanted to ask you about that. What First of all, what was it like being amongst legends,
Oh
uh,
my God, I know, right? I was
and,
kind of
and
like,
and being hosted by someone who was clearly impersonating me?
I
Um,
know, right? He's stealing your idea.
Thank you. So I have Dracula and Doctor What's His Face stealing my act. I should have patented this thing.
You should have. You should have. Long time ago.
Like outside of how he looked, like he had the voice, he even had the mad science credentials.
Hmm.
Like what the f? But anyway, I digress. So just how did you get linked with the panel, and I cut you off, but I really I would love to hear more about your thoughts and your feelings because I can only imagine how awe-inspiring it was to be amongst such legends and such fellow creatives.
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate and lucky. Um, I have a friend, Facebook friend, who I think I've done his podcast before. I'm pretty sure I've done his podcast before, but his name is Patrick Farmer, and he just messaged me out of the blue, and he was like, "Hey, would you like to be on a horror host panel?" And I was like, "Well, what is it?" And so he told me the details, and I'm like, "Well, I'm off work that day. Sure, why not?" And so I got attached to it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, "Spanguli's here? Like, what's up with that? How did this
Right.
happen?" Right? Like, I had no idea, and it was super chill, it was a lot of fun, just listening to everybody's stories was great.
Mhm.
Everybody on that panel is a hard worker, you know, it's great. It's great to get connected with people, and I was
Mhm.
just even thankful to even be there, you know? I didn't
Of
even have to say a word,
course.
I coulda just sat through the whole thing, it was just really it was fun.
I, and I watched that panel. I had a lot of fun. It was very enjoyable just hearing everyone's different perspective because it was a wide range. You had some
So
folks that
much,
had been
yeah.
horror hosting several decades, and
Yeah.
then I guess you were sort of the baby.
I was the baby. I've only been
You
around
were
like
the
maybe 4 or 5
baby.
years, and everybody's like, "I've been doing this 12. I've been doing this 20." I'm like, "Oh, I just fell into it." So yeah, it was really cool. Really, really cool.
Well, speaking of being the newbie, do you have any advice for anyone listening out there that might be getting into horror hosting or maybe getting into filmmaking? Because I'd love to hear your perspective because you've come a long way in a very short amount of time in both aspects. So, what's the secret in the sauce?
To just do it. Just do it. I know that sounds like so weird and I'm stealing Nike's, slogan, but it's true. You just got to do it. Like you cannot listen to the voices around you because there are going to be a lot of people that are like, that's a stupid idea, that's dumb, why would you want to do it? But if it makes you happy, you like doing it, you want to do it, just do it and do it. Don't just say, oh, I'll do it next week. No, do it now. Start something now, because if you just keep pushing it off, you're never going to do it. Everybody's voice is so original, and we all have different stories that we can tell, and you and I could tell the same story, but it
Mhm.
would be so different because we're two totally different people. And that's what's beautiful about filmmaking, about art, about all that kind of stuff. I was having a conversation like this with my best friend Charles Chudabala, who's releasing his next short film soon, and it you just have to do it and do it the way you want to do it. There are no rules. That's the whole thing about why I love the horror genre too. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want to do. Want to kill somebody this way, you want to have a murder mystery this certain way, you can do that because there's no right or wrong. Anything's possible, but you just have to just do it.
That's wonderful advice. And you kind of hit the nail on the head when speaking about horror. It made me think of something the other day because, of course, in Endless Night, your count does nothing but contemplate sometimes, and
Long
sometimes,
nights,
well,
yes.
sometimes I do it to procrastinate on things that I have to be doing for the human producers. But that's neither here nor there. You know, I nowadays just and this is the perspective of a creature, of a monster, of someone who is of horror. I think, and I want your thoughts on this. I think the horror genre now it's it's going through such a renaissance, and there's so much out there because I feel like horror is really the only genre out there that is at least trying to bring people something new and original.
Yep, I would agree with you on that for sure.
So
For sure. And I
and
and I was gonna say I feel like the reason we can do that is because again, there's no horror, there's no rules.
right.
You know, like with comedy, you have to have, you know, the setup and then the funny line. And then I mean, I took a whole sitcom course, you know, to try and
Mm,
act in sitcom. And it was just like the punchline and setting up the joke. And then there's all this structure and all this like you have to do this way.
mhm.
Where horror, you can tell any type of story you want and you can say it however you want. And I feel like that, and that's why it's easy for people to tell these stories because there's not a certain structure you got to follow.
Fascinating. And that I feel like that could be a motivational quote on a T-shirt. You can do anything in horror, just do it,
Just do it.
and we will
Yes.
fight, Nike.
Yes. They'll probably sue our asses, but you know, we got to do
But
it.
we will win.
Yes.
Well, you know, they may beat us in a court battle, but there's no way that they could beat us in hand-to-hand combat.
Yep.
That's what you see there. See, they're trying to level the playing field that way, but we know better.
Uh-huh.
But okay, so before I let you go, this not really a question, just a humorous observation on my part. I happened to notice the head of the dear departed gentleman behind you,
Uh-huh.
and I felt like it was entirely appropriate for us to compare heads.
Oh, by all means.
This is the head of Gregory Lanham.
Oh.
Well,
Gregory.
it's strange because he's still alive, but we have his head. So it's just here. I keep it here at all times. I used
Wow.
him for a Christmas ornament.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he was the star on my tree. So and sometimes
perfect.
I put a little hat on him. He has a wig around here somewhere.
I was gonna say, doesn't his head get cold? I mean, George-
Sometimes
George's head gets cold a
Well,
lot too. So
George, he looks like a George.
yep, George is a little sticky. Ooh, he's sticky and he's
Ooh. I was going to say he's still fresh.
so
This one,
smiling.
well, I don't know what Gregory's visage is on in his head edition, his severed human head edition. I think it's a, you know what? It's a look of condescension, just like everyone else in my life. So, oh well.
You gotta get what you take. Gotta take what you gotta get. You know.
Well, Jenn, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and thank you so much for your time. It means so much when with such an esteemed guest takes the time to talk with us and the Spooks and Spookettes here on CountDrahoon's Feature of Fright. Now, I want to give you just a minute or two to plug away. Tell us where we can go to check out Queen Malvolia, but also your other projects.
Sure, yeah. So all Malvolia, Queen Malvolia, skits, hostings, everything is on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C/Malvolia, the Queen of Screams. I know that's a mouthful, but that's what it is. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Queen Malvolia. Or if you wanted to check out some of my other short films, I have another YouTube channel. I believe it's youtube.com/C/Jennifer Nangle. They've changed it like so many times. So I believe that that's what it is. If not, you can search Jennifer Nangle. I'll probably come up. Or I'm at Jennifer _ Nangle on Instagram and Twitter, or Facebook, just Jennifer Nangle. Yeah.
And of course, we did put the at Queen Malvolia Instagram on the coffin bulletin board.
Yeah.
It's so nifty. I love it. But
I love that.
anyway,
That's really fun.
it is. It's a lot. And again, another shout out to dear patron Nicole for getting us that, because it makes it so much more convenient for our guests so that we can actually put their information. So it's right there, and you have to look at it.
Everybody stares at it. Yeah.
Everyone stares at it. So Spooks and Spookettes, there's no excuse. Go follow Queen Malvolia right now, or I'm going to be very disappointed.
He's
But,
gonna haunt your
anyway,
nightmares. Yeah.
Jenn, Well, I already do that anyway, but like
Oh, my
I'll
God.
double down on it. So I'll get more creative. You can help.
There you go. Perfect. I'll join. It'll be the 2 for the price of 1.
There you go. Talk about another massacre. The massacre brought
Yes.
to you by disgruntled horror hosts because you won't follow our Instagram accounts.
That's us.
Well, Jen, once again, thank you so much. And thank you, Spooks and Spookettes, for joining us. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. But be sure to join me next time. Next week, I will be with my friends at the Deliciously Nothing podcast. We're going to do the commentary over Freaks. Rev has never seen Freaks before, so this will be interesting. And it's been a while since your dear Count has as well. And of course, as always, if you want to help Count Drahoon's Feature of Fright, see the Patreon link below. Help us keep the lights off. And be sure to subscribe to Trauma Now to see unabridged episodes of Count Drahoon's Feature of Fright. You might even see the tonight's interview make its way back, resurrected in a longer episode. But we shall see. Until then, as far as things go, when things go bump in the night, there are
such things.
such things.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And
And
long-leggedy
long-legged
beasties.
And
Things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us!